anti-race theory targets deans on college campuses, urging them to accept the idea that white people are inferior. Well, not their tuition money at least, which will be treated equally, even if the students won't be. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show. We are the only program that keeps you educated on this craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell, our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66% at MyPillow.com when you use the program code Dr. Duke, D-R-D-U-K-E. Support us by supporting MyPillow. Today, we start at the University of Kentucky, where thousands and thousands of dollars were spent on an anti-racist workshop to tell administrators like deans to, quote, replace white supremacy with the more accurate white inferiority complex. So white supremacy now is no longer woke. Calling white kids white supremacists suggests that there might be something, supreme about them. So let's call white supremacy now white inferiority complex. The white inferiority complex that enslaved the world and built these great cities is now actually a mark of failure, not supremacy. There you go.
It makes perfect sense. And so you have to follow this. The University of Kentucky gave all this money to an assistant professor's private company.
Not even a tenured idiot.
To host this said anti-racist workshop for these school administrators. So follow that little line. Okay, now that you got it, we found out that it was $5,000 for a 4-hour introductory workshop and a 2-hour intermediate workshop for up to 50 people, and it was $2,000 technically, and it was $8,000 technically for that, but then you got a discount, so it was only $5,000. So wow. It was such a steal. Is really what they did. So yeah. Now, according to it was Professor Candace Hargan's Center for Healing Racial Trauma. That's the invoice that they got. That was the
healing racial
Center
trauma
for Healing Racial.
I just don't see
trauma.
Healing happening.
Now, Hargan's, of course, is an assistant professor.
Yes, it seems to me that not healing is not what these activists want. They want to keep ripping the scab off and making more money, right?
Yes. Well, she's assistant professor in the Department of Educational, School, and Counseling Psychology.
There you have it, an education professor.
But she also serves as the executive director of the Center for the Healing Racial Trauma. And according to the university's own website, Hargens directs the Rise 2 research team, the Relationships, Intimacy, and Sexual Enrichment, Race, Intersectionality, and Social Justice Engagement. That's a mouthful. And this is where they study sex, social justice, and leadership, all with a love ethic.
Yeah.
We're not making this up because this is exactly what it says on their website.
The days of reading, writing, arithmetic are long gone on your college campuses.
Yes. Now, the specific workshop that they have for the administrators, again, to get the white inferiority complex, was called Cultivating an Anti-Racist Mindset for Academic Administrators. And it involved participants having to state their chosen metric for anti-racism. You're like, what? What does that mean? So it's choosing who they want to be, be accountable to, and steps that they would take then so far. So they had to sit in a circle. I'm imagining maybe it's not a circle, but they sat in a circle and they had to write down on a piece of paper. There was actually a piece of paper that said, these are the steps that I am/have taken to be anti-racist. So they did this. They wrote them all down. And so Mary Davis, who's the dean of the university for the College of Law that they have there, wrote that she has begun to force myself to accept white inferiority. The dean of the College of Law College, dean, says she's had to force herself to accept her white inferiority. And it's been really hard, she said.
Well, but
it's really hard.
Now, that was her former white supremacy, right? And so no one ever explains this. How was she guilty of white supremacy?
We don't know.
But now that she is, and she's acknowledged it, it's actually not white supremacy. It shows how really inferior her white skin is, right?
Yes, but it goes on because we have Eric N. Monday, who's the executive vice president for finance and administration. So the guy dealing with all money. He says he's going to be focused on race-based hiring and compensation in his responses. He chose, as he wrote it in his little notes, increased number of BIPOC MF staff, or male-female staff. That was his chosen anti-racism metric, and that it would specifically saying that they would be compensated at $50,000 or greater. He just randomly put this number in, if they're a minority, they must be $50,000 or greater. And he added that he created a BIPOC recruitment fund of $250,000 per year for the next 2 years. And where this money's coming from, nobody knows.
Well, he also says, and this is ominous, I will also add a diversity, equity, and inclusion element into all merit reviews for faculty. Oh. They're thinking about doing this at my university. My response is going to be, you want to know what mine's going to be? I teach white male literature. That is the biggest minority on campus, and it's the most attacked and most discriminated against form of literature. So therefore, I am doing more for equity than you are. We'll see how that goes over. Probably not real well. In other words, it's not enough that you admit it. It's not enough you grovel and debase yourself. It's not enough you hate yourself for your whiteness and then make white kids hate themselves. All that's not enough. Now you're going to have to prove on your every 2 or 3 or 4 year review that you've done all kinds of equity and diversity work. Even if you're a math teacher or a geologist, you better figure out something to do, because the only way you're getting through down the road is if you completely conform to their programs.
Well, we have to move on to more equity, because equity.
Menstrual equity.
So we're in the land of no science, California specifically, where a bill in the legislature would require public universities, community colleges, and secondary schools in the state to provide free menstrual products on campus. And the bill does note that the complementary period products are not just for girls and women. They're intended to be used by biological males, including transgender men, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people who may also menstruate. Yep. So AB 367 is the Menstrual Equity for All Act of 2021. Have you noticed how all of the acts of 2021 are something for all?
Menstrual equity for
all.
Well, how about compensation? How about compensation? Shouldn't those of us who cannot menstruate, shouldn't we be compensated? You keep telling us we should. I haven't been able to pull it off. Don't I deserve something? Don't I deserve compensation? Doesn't that make me disabled? Doesn't that make me, as a non-menstruating man, doesn't that make me less of a man, according to these views? And so what are you going to do to compensate me for not menstruating?
So many different comebacks all at once in that whole phrase.
Do I need non-menstruation therapy?
You need therapy.
Should I strap tampons to the inside of my boxer briefs just to feel included? What am I supposed to do here?
Never mention your boxer briefs again. Number one.
Well, seriously.
Start there.
I mean, look, why can't I go through the motions of this? I mean, I'll stick a tampon down my pants for a week every month, and we'll get some red ink that everybody gets, and we can pretend, because that's what this is. This is great big pretending. Let's all pretend together. But my point is that if I am a man who does not menstruate, then I, by this definition, am an outlier. It's like a barren woman. Where is my compensation for my failure to menstruate? You owe me something, California. Big time.
Well, according to this act, specifically, all public schools serving students in grades 6 to 12, the California State University, and each California community college, their district, all public agencies that maintain restrooms, facilities for the public and for employees are going to stock at least 50% of restrooms with feminine hygiene products at all times in requests of the regents of the University of California and private higher education institutions to do the same. So basically, they're trying to get tampons in all the bathrooms because not only women menstruate. That's their whole point.
Here's my problem. Being a non-menstruating man, when I see those menstrual products in a men's room, it's going to hurt me. It's going to break my little heart.
But you just acknowledge that you are a man, and therefore your opinion doesn't matter.
Well, but I am a man who cannot menstruate. And so that would be like a woman who can't have babies having a baby changing center put in every woman's room. See how insensitive that is? See how terribly insensitive that is? I mean, look, all you could do is try to use their own stupidity against themselves, right? Play their game their way. As in the same way that a barren woman, could you even use the word barren anymore? Is that even allowed? A woman who could not conceive. Can you imagine? We're going to put a baby changing center in all female spaces moving forward. What are you basically telling women who can't reproduce? Same thing here. I am a man who does not menstruate. And so consequently, by putting those things in the bathrooms that I use, you are maligning me. You are mocking me. You are dangling from its little cotton cord in front of me, how less of a woman I actually am, even though I'm a man. Because to be a man is to be able to menstruate, right? Is this not the world we live in?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, from the bill specifically, it says California recognizes that access to menstrual products is a basic human right, and it is vital for ensuring the health, dignity, and full participation of all Californians in public life.
But I can't participate.
Inadequate menstrual support is associated with both health and psychosocial issues, particularly among low-income people. A lack of access to menstrual products can cause emotional distress, physical infection, and disease. See how they put into there how everything's a basic human right, and it's always related back to their social, emotional health.
If you're a man...
And it's always being put on to the low-income people.
Yeah.
From their own words, people will say, why is it always put on to us? But we know it's not just for women, as you keep pointing out. California has an interest in promoting gender equity, not only for women and girls, but also for transgender men, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people who may also menstruate and experience inequities resulting from lack of access to menstrual products. We've been talking about lack of access to menstrual products for the past couple years. But before that, there was this large gap of many years where it was fine because everyone was able to find menstrual products. And yet, here we are. Well. Our friends, Princeton. Princeton, go Princeton.
Jesus.
Always
Is this
go
an
Princeton.
Heil Eisenberger Gruber story? The little Nazi German president of Princeton.
It's not him specifically this time. But at Princeton, they are going to read about Marxism and learn about Black Lives Matter because that's what you do at Princeton, the university. In the fall 2021 course called Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag. That's what our course titles now are. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Yours should be Hashtag Shakespeare. That's what you should change.
Hashtag Shakespeare doesn't matter. How about that?
That's a lot of letters.
Hashtag dead white male. How about that?
Hashtag dead white male. You know what? That would be if you put hashtag dead white male, people would be like, yeah, I'm going to enroll in that because we're going to kill all the white men.
How about hashtag Shakespeare doesn't menstruate? How about that?
You are just all about that. Well, in the hashtag Black Lives Matter course, they plan to discuss the important role the social movement has played in fighting against historical oppression of Black Americans. And it's being taught by Professor Hannah Garth, who wrote a book about Black food. So she is well qualified. Black food, because Black food matters. Get it? See how they did like the whole Black food matters, like Black Lives Matter, like their food matters? Anyway, the official title, of course, is Black Food Matters, Racial Justice in the Wake of Food Justice. And it gives an in-depth account of Black food and the challenges it faces today. Now, my question is...
I'm going to sit back in my chair, black food. Does she dare mention chicken and waffles? Does she dare mention watermelon? Come on, bring out the stereotypes. What exactly is black food?
Good question, because I culturally appropriate watermelon. Just had some last night. It's my favorite food overall, watermelon. I love it. It's one food that I would beat anyone else at eating in quantity. Watermelon. It's one food I could do. But anyway, in the summary of said black food mattering, for Black Americans, the food system is broken. When it comes to nutrition, Black consumers experience an unjust and inequitable distribution of resources. Yep. It's only Black kids who
that's right.
eat bad in America, not everyone who's ever gone to McDonald's.
And yet you turn around and say, let's make WIC cards or food stamp cards only apply to produce and healthy food. And that's racist too.
Oh, don't get me started on
that's
on
racist
the checks.
too, right?
Don't get me started on...
It's unbelievable.
People really need them, and people who really need them should get them, not the people who don't really
Which
need
means
them.
about 1 in 10 now actually probably need them.
So, just so we know, Professor Hannah Garth previously taught courses on post-colonial and decolonial theory, race and racisms, and anthropological perspectives on the human body. So, of course, hashtag Black Lives Matter is a course at Princeton, again, this is Princeton, that everyone should be taking. It says this seminar traces the historical roots and the growth of the Black Lives Matter social movement in the United States in comparative global context. And within the course, they're going to read a book called Freedom is a Constant Struggle by the Angela Davis.
When she's not killing cops, she's grifting universities for all kinds of money.
Yeah, you remember her? She Black Panther, she was out there. She was on the America's FBI Most Wanted list at one point. She was acquitted of a kidnapping charge, but, she got the Lennon Peace Prize. Not like John Lennon of the Beatles, the other Lennon. And back in 1979, she got the Lennon Peace Prize. And it was given to her, of course, by East Germany, the communist country that was its own back before Germany was reunited and it felt so good. It was East Germany. Anyway... Now, according to the course, like the Black Lives Matter movement, is committed to resisting, unveiling, and undoing histories of state-sanctioned violence against Black and brown bodies, because it's always about the Black and the brown bodies. The course is also going to offer a critical examination of the prison industrial complex, because it's always the prison industrial complex too, police brutality, and of course urban poverty and white supremacy in the United States.
So the whole laundry list, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I guess none of that's surprising. It's just sad that all of this empty buzz phrasing, all of this repetitive, self-generated nonsense, it's all just a complicated way of hiding what's going on really here. This is all make-believe nonsense. This is progressive liberal make-believe nonsense in order to undo Western culture, and it is staggering. One bolt at a time, one block at a time, one brick at a time. This kind of doublespeak is actually dismantling Western culture. No foreign enemy, no invading army, no disease or famine or a plague could actually slow this country down. But our own surrender to some of the stupidest bits of rhetoric. In the words of Thomas Sowell, the great African-American economist, this may be the first this may be the first country in the history of the world that fell not because of outside enemies or threats, but because of the stupidity that our teachers were teaching our own kids and teaching it to them as if it were the truth. Welcome to another Instant Classic. This is Church Week on the Dr. Duke Show. That is Frederick Edwin Church, the great American sublime artist who was born about the middle of the 1820s, 1826 or so, died in 1900, had a great career, one of the most, at the time, probably the most famous American painter in the world. One of his paintings sold in 1979 for more money than any other American painting in the history of the country. So one of our great painters, one of our most known painters, and we're studying him today because of his understanding of the sublime, about turning to nature to give us a sense of perspective and humility, two things that the modern progressive does not have. A sense of place. Where are we what is our role in the universe, and humility, right? Gratitude and self-abasement in the face of these great natural wonders that God has made for our contemplation. And what natural wonder in the Western Hemisphere has been more covered and more painted than Niagara Falls? Here is, of all the renderings of Niagara Falls by sublime painters in the 19th century, this is clearly the greatest. This is Frederick Edward Church's Niagara. It was his most important work to date. By then, 1857, he was just beginning to cut his chops. He was just beginning to make a name for himself. We've seen how many of his great paintings were painted between 1861 and 1865. This was early on for him, and this one really put him on the map. 1857 confirmed his reputation as the premier American landscape painter of the time. In his history of Niagara Falls, Pierre Berton writes, quote, "Of the hundreds of paintings made of Niagara before Church and after him, this is with common consent the greatest." I think it's exactly right. The falls were very, very commonly painted, being such an attraction to landscape artists that, writes John Howitt, they were, quote, "the most popular, the most often treated, and the tritest single subject matter of item of 18th century and 19th century European and American painting." So it was done so often it was trite, but not this picture. You get a just gorgeous panorama here. Stepping back from the falls, you can see the power and the rush of those falls. You can see the swirling whitecaps. But boy, that ominous gray sky in the back with those almost periwinkle dark blood-colored clouds. I mean, you got a real sense here of the not just the beauty, but the dangerousness of this kind of a spectacle. How fatal it can be if you try to insert yourself into it any other way. And so the falls were overpainted ultimately. But this was a masterpiece. The public was so captivated by the natural wonder of the falls, they considered this landmark of North American landscape a major tourist destination. In the 1850s, it was the subject of millions of stereographs, and its image could be found on wallpaper, china, lampshades, among the other consumer items. For Americans, the falls symbolized the grandeur and expansionism of the United States. It's also an image from an American, not a Canadian perspective, perhaps of manifest destiny. It's this unstoppable force that was pouring across the land. And so many really, really great institutions and ideas represented in this painting of Niagara by our painter of the week, painter of the highest magnitude, American painters anyway, Painter Church.
All right, those are the stories for today. If you have a question for us, please feel free to drop it in the mailbag by emailing askduke@fpeusa.org. And if you enjoy our content, please consider joining the Patriot Club. Your one-time $99 tax-deductible donation allows us to keep bringing you these stories every day. Simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. And of course, we will ship you our signature tumbler as just a little thank you.
And that's going to do it for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.